Denise had everything she dreamed of. She married her high school sweetheart. They traveled abroad, sharing their faith with others, helping many families in need, and they started their own family. In 2013, Denise was the mother of 3 children. The family just celebrated Valentine's Day that morning, sharing gifts, but she never showed up to pick up her daughter from school later that day. Something sinister happened on a day we usually celebrate love. This is her story. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kimbyrleigha. If you've never been here before, nice to finally meet you. And like always, before I get into today's case, I would like to thank our sponsor for today. Today's video is sponsored by Dipsea. What's your love language? Is it physical touch? How about time together with your partner? Those are probably 2 of my most important love languages, but we're all different. People are fulfilled in all sorts of ways, and Dipsea has invented a whole new love language with sexy stories for whatever mood you're in. Try it, because I promise you, if you like listening to stories, you'll love Dipsea. Many of you that are loyal viewers to this channel already know all about Dipsea as a loyal sponsor. Their product is a little different from some of the others that I've shared, so listen for just a minute because you might just be intrigued. Dipsea is an app full of hundreds of short, sexy audio stories designed by women for women. They bring scenarios to life with immersive soundscapes and realistic characters. You'll discover stories about second chance romances, adventurous vacation flings, and hot and heavy hookups. Dipsea is also radically inclusive. There are stories for straight and queer listeners, and 56% of stories are voice acted by people of color. I feel like no matter who you are or what turns you on, Dipsea includes stories from narrators with very soothing voices that can calm you, get you to relax, put you to sleep, and more. New content is released every single week, so in between listening to your favorite stories again and again, you can always find something new to explore. They also have soothing sleep stories, wellness sessions, and sexy stories that you can read. Listen to stories voiced by celebrities like ER Fightmaster and Luke Cook. And let Dipsea be your go-to place to spice up your me time, explore your fantasies, relax and unwind, or heat things up with a partner. Try something new, especially while Dipsea is offering an extended 30-day free trial when you go to dipseastories.com/Kimbyrleigha. That's 30 days of full access for free when you go to dipseastories.com/Kimbyrleigha. I'm gonna leave it up on the screen, and there's gonna be a link in my description box below. A big thanks to Dipsea for being a loyal sponsor of this channel and making today's video possible. Now let's get into the case for today. Today I'm going to introduce you to Denise Newton. She was born February 3rd, 1974 in Miami, Florida, Dade County, to her parents Diane and Douglas Newton. During her childhood, her family moved to Illinois from Florida. Denise and her siblings attended Faith Baptist Christian School in Pekin, Illinois. The school says it strives to provide a solid education and a nurturing and safe environment based on Christ's philosophy. And their graduates possess the knowledge to succeed in college, a desire to serve in their local churches, and a commitment to strong Christian families and education. They graduate as leaders in their community, churches, and their workplaces. As a graduate of Faith Baptist School, Denise Newton possessed all of those admirable qualities and more. While Denise was attending Faith Baptist, she met her first crush. His name was Nathan. Nathan and Denise met when Nathan was in 3rd grade and Denise was in 4th. Denise swept Nathan off his feet with her bouncy little curls and her bright personality. For Nathan, Denise was not only the most beautiful girl in the school, but in the whole world. Nathan doubted Denise knew he even existed at the time, but they developed a friendship in junior high school, and Denise and Nathan both had crushes on one another up until high school. But since they had conservative religious backgrounds, they weren't allowed to date each other. Neither one of their parents believed in dating, so all they could do is maintain a good friendship. Most of the time, they would just hang out with each other at the youth group or church-related activities. That didn't stop them from being absolutely inseparable, and everyone noticed their connection. They spent every waking moment with one another. Nathan was smitten with Denise, his first and only girlfriend. The couple were popular students during their high school years. Nathan was a star basketball player, and Denise cheered him on from the sidelines. Even the teachers could see that they had this connection between them, something special. Denise was a year older than Nathan, So she ended up graduating in 1992, and she left Illinois to attend a college in Minnesota. It was the first time that the pair was truly apart. But the following year, Nathan graduated from Faith Baptist Christian School, and he followed Denise to Minnesota. Denise and Nathan's engagement 1 year later didn't surprise anyone that knew them. Nathan said he proposed to Denise without a second of hesitation. Growing up, Nathan admired Denise's parents because he thought they had a perfect relationship. In Nathan's mind, Denise's mother, Diane, was the ideal wife and mother. He thought that the marriage she had to Douglas was the epitome of love, and he wanted the same. He spent almost every day at the Newtons' home. It was like a second home to him, and Denise's parents loved him and saw him as one of their own children. And when Nathan saw the way that Denise was a lot like her mother, he knew he wanted to spend forever with her. Denise married Nathan Leuthold, her high school sweetheart, on July 15th, 1995 in LaSalle, Illinois. Diane was so happy for Denise, so happy. She always loved being a wife and a mother herself, so she was excited that her daughter finally found true love to experience that with. Before Denise and Nathan exchanged their vows at their wedding ceremony, she actually prepared and sang a song for Nathan about how he was her everything, that everything Denise ever wanted was standing before her in him. That's really special. Wow. It's like a once-in-a-lifetime love. She knew that their marriage was going to be everything that she dreamed of since she was a little girl. Many women know exactly what they want down to the colors of flowers from a very young age. After they got married, the couple made their home in Peoria, Illinois, where Denise began working for a local insurance company and Nathan took a job in sales. The Leutholds were very active members of their local church, LaMarche Baptist Church in Mapleton, Illinois. Religion and God were at the center of their marriage and their lives. Nathan couldn't help but feel like he was meant for something more, especially when it came to his spiritual calling. It had been Nathan's dream to participate in missions abroad for the Baptist Church for many years. And he finally shared this dream with Denise, and of course, she felt like it was God's will, and they would find a way. In 1998, the Leuthold family was given the opportunity to take part in a mission trip to Lithuania. Another young couple from their church started their own missionary, and they were taking trips to Lithuania to share the gospel. Well, Nathan saw this as his chance to make his dream come true. So he asked the couple running the missions trip if him and Denise could assist them. Of course, they wanted more people to help them, so they agreed, but it wouldn't happen overnight. It cost money. It was an investment to move. So Denise and Nathan decided to ask her parents if they could come live with them for about 6 months to save money, and they said yes. So the two of them sold all their possessions and they moved into the Newtons' home at 700 West Mossville Road, Peoria, Illinois. While they were there, they worked hard and they studied everything they could about Lithuania, including learning the language. Neither Denise or Nathan were familiar with the country at the time. I'm half Lithuanian on my dad's side. I've never learned the language either, but Lithuania lies in Eastern Europe, with the Baltic Sea along its western coast. Of the 3 Baltic states, Lithuania has the largest population and the largest area. In 2015, Lithuania had a population of about 2 million people. Although it does have a large population, the country is slightly smaller than half the size of Greece, and the language spoken there is Lithuanian. The main religion is Roman Catholic, with more than 3/4 of the population participating in it. Finally, though, their dream came true, and they made their way out to Lithuania. Denise absolutely loved being a part of sharing God's love and message with the Lithuanian children that she mentored. But after about a year, it was time to return home because the Leutholds were about to welcome a new baby of their own into the world. Shortly after arriving back in 2000, their son Seth was born. Now it was time to give their full attention to their own child and spend their time devoted to him. But not too long after Seth was born, Denise found out she was pregnant again. She gave birth to their first daughter, Julia, and by 2002, the Leuthold family returned to Lithuania, and they lived there on and off for the next 8 years. They would spend time there, and then they would come back to the U.S. for a little bit until they saved enough money to go back again. Even though Denise was excited about their work in Lithuania, it was really difficult for her to be alone with 2 young children in a strange country. She didn't have any family there or any friends to support her. and she missed her family and her loved ones, and they were missing out on little Seth and Julia growing up. Diane, Denise's mom, thought it was actually really traumatic for her daughter to go through this, but Denise knew that this meant so much to Nathan, so she powered through it. She wanted to be that strong, supportive wife that she believed God wanted her to be. So Denise decided to make the most of her time in Lithuania by sharing her love of Jesus and her faith through music. Her role at the church was to teach the young girls Bible stories and play the piano. Denise devoted her time to children and their families, and her and Nathan even helped women that were in very toxic and dangerous relationships. They helped them get places where they would be cared for. In addition, they helped several Lithuanian people come to the United States to study, play sports, or work, sometimes sponsoring students and helping them get set up financially or assisting them with learning the culture in the United States. One family that got very close to was the Dobalate family, who they met back in the early 2000s. They had a little 6-year-old at the time. Her name was Ina, and she was there with her family, and they were helping as much as they possibly could. By 2010, Denise was expecting baby number 3, little Janelle, and that's my youngest sister's name too. So once again, the family made plans to go back and spend time in the United States until after the baby was born. They went back to live with Denise's parents while they worked, raised their children, and raised money to return to Lithuania. They wanted to raise enough money so that they could also sponsor students and assist families. A few years later, in 2013, the Leuthold family was still living in the United States with Denise's parents, Diane and Doug. You may remember this home, 700 West Mossville Road. It's where both of them lived when they were saving up the first time to go to Lithuania. And it was probably a little cramped with Denise's mom and dad, plus the Leutholds and their 3 children. It was just a 3-bedroom home with 3 bathrooms. Maybe it was just enough for the 2 couples to have their own rooms and the kids to take the 3rd. At the time, Seth was 12, Julia was 10, and little Janelle was only 4. They really did have a growing family, and it was very generous of Denise's family to allow them to stay there. Denise was really happy to be back at home in Illinois with her family and friends. Besides being reunited with her loved ones, being back in the United States allowed Nathan to visit various Baptist churches and raise funds for their next mission trip to Lithuania, which was still his number one passion. But a part of me kind of thought that the reason Denise wanted to get pregnant again was to move back to the United States. I could tell through everything I read that it made her really homesick to be there, no matter how much she wanted to do for her husband. But let's go to Thursday, February 14th, 2013, Valentine's Day. It was a normal weekday, except it was a holiday, and when the Leutholds were back in the United States, they took pride in the American holidays, making sure their children got to celebrate Christmas, Thanksgiving, even Valentine's Day. So that morning, Seth, Julia, and Janelle woke up to find that Denise had laid out gifts for them on the kitchen table. The night before, Nathan had purchased a card and a rose for Denise and left them on the table as well for his wife of almost 18 years. After the Leuthold family exchanged their Valentine's Day gifts, the day continued as usual. Seth and Julia attended school, and Nathan ran errands, and Denise took Janelle to her pre-K session at 12:15 p.m., and both of Denise's parents went to work. At around 3 p.m., though, Nathan was on his way to pick up Janelle from daycare, and Denise was supposed to pick up Julia. However, Nathan was surprised because he gets a phone call from his dad, Bruce, asking, "Hey, do you need help getting Julia from school?" And Nathan's confused. He's like, "What do you mean?" Well, it turns out, according to Nathan's dad, the school called him and said that Denise had never arrived at school to pick Julia up, and she was just sitting there waiting. So Nathan told his father to just wait a few minutes because he knew Denise would most likely be on her way to the school. She was just probably late. Maybe she was in traffic or her errands ran longer than usual because Denise was very responsible. This was unlike her, very out of character. Nathan started to call Denise, but she didn't answer. He texted her, but those messages were not returned. As soon as he hung up with his father, Nathan called him back and told him, "You know what? Just go ahead and pick up Julia because I don't know where Denise is." Nathan also said, "I'm going to go to the house and see what the reason is for her not being there. Maybe she forgot." So when Nathan pulls up into their driveway, he's immediately concerned. The garage door was wide open, which is very odd, and Denise's vehicle was nowhere to be found. Nathan parks his car in the driveway, and begins to walk around the home. He gets about halfway through the backyard, and he notices, you know what? Something's wrong here. He looks back into the garage and he notices something just didn't seem right. So he goes back to the garage, and that's when he sees broken glass. The door that's between the garage and the home had broken glass in it. He thought that someone may have broken into their home. So Nathan ran back to his car, and little Janelle was still waiting in the back seat. And he just gets in and he backs his car out of the driveway and backs it right into his neighbor's driveway across the street, and he calls 911. He didn't know what to do. He didn't know if the person was still inside. He wasn't a very confrontational type of person. He would rather the burglar just take all their material possessions that don't mean anything than to risk something happening to his family. In the meantime, as he waited for the police to arrive, Nathan continued to call Denise and her relatives and her friends, hoping that someone had heard from her, but no one had. 2 officers arrived a few minutes later. They pull into the Newtons' driveway and they're looking around for the man who put in the 911 call, and they can't locate Nathan. That's when they realize he's parked at the neighbor's house. An officer spotted him holding his little daughter across the street at 703 West Mossville Road. So he walks over to Nathan and says, "What is going on?" Nathan tells the officer he had just returned home from picking up his youngest daughter from the school. And when he came to the house, he saw the garage door open and some broken glass. And he explained that prior to this, he'd been calling his wife, who failed to pick up their 10-year-old daughter from her school. And it also seemed like his wife's phone was off. No one was able to get a hold of her. And he thought maybe she was at home running late, but her car isn't there. The officers make their way over to the Newtons' home, and Nathan called Denise's mom, Diane, who was still at work at the time. Nathan told his mother-in-law that it looked like someone had broken into their home, and no one could get in touch with Denise, so she left work and raced over immediately. Meanwhile, officers are surveying the outside of the Newtons' home, and they don't find any forced entry. But they do find a muddy puddle in the backyard. However, they don't see any footprints or other disturbances in it. The officers decide to enter through the open garage. Since the officer doesn't know what he's about to walk into, he calls for backup before entering the home. The officer headed back to the front of the house to wait for backup, and Nathan was still in his car outside the neighbor's home with his daughter. After the second officer arrived, they entered the house, and they noticed something strange. The drawers were pulled out of the kitchen. All the kitchen cabinets were open, and all the kitchen drawers were ransacked. Things had definitely been rummaged through. It looked like they were dealing with a robbery, but it got worse. As the officers approached the house's entryway, they discovered a woman lying face down on the floor. She was wearing her winter coat and her gloves, and it looked like she had just come inside and was knocked to the ground. They could even see her glasses laying right next to her. And that's when they saw it. A pool of blood under her matted hair. There was a shell casing and a live round near the woman's head, and a set of car keys were tangled in her hair. They surmised that she'd come inside as the burglar was ransacking the house, and she was killed as a result. So the officers step outside and immediately call dispatch, alerting the department that there was a murder at the scene. After grabbing their bulletproof shields, the officers re-entered the home and cleared it room by room to make sure the intruder was gone. The house was empty, except for the deceased female, and they didn't know who this woman was. But considering Denise had been missing and was unable to be reached, they believed it was most likely her. But they didn't want to upset Nathan before they knew for sure, so they went outside to gather some more information from him. But Nathan and his daughter Janelle are no longer in the car. They had actually gone into their neighbor's home. So after knocking on their neighbor's door and requesting that Nathan come outside, the officers asked him for a description of Denise's vehicle so they could see if the keys that they found matched it. But as Nathan began telling the officers what kind of car she drives, detectives back at the Newtons' home started to put up the yellow crime scene tape and cordon off the area. Nathan was just sitting there watching anxiously from across the street. The detectives that were on scene thought the same thing as the first responders. Since Denise was wearing her coat and gloves when she was shot in the head, the detectives concluded that her shooter ambushed her as she walked inside. There was no sign of a murder weapon at the crime scene, but it did appear to be a .40 caliber handgun. Although they didn't have an official identification through, let's say, an autopsy, the detectives matched Denise's body to pictures of her. Now they needed to notify Nathan about the horrific news that his wife of almost 2 decades, the mother of his 3 children, his soulmate, was dead. The thing is, Nathan already knew. And no, it wasn't a gut instinct or anything spiritual. His father told him. His father called Nathan and said, "I'm on my way. I just heard the radio. Local news said that someone was found shot in your home." And Nathan figured it had to be Denise because everyone else was accounted for. It was like time had stopped. He was in disbelief. He covered his face and he embraced his beautiful curly-haired 4-year-old little daughter, Janelle, who was the spitting image of her mother. This couldn't be happening. He didn't know what he was going to do. His young daughter, she just smiled at him, not even understanding the gravity of what had just happened. Now it was time for the officers to notify Denise's other family members, but Diane was already approaching her street, and she noticed the road was blocked off, and she couldn't pass. She was concerned for her daughter, so Diane abandoned her vehicle and tried to run to her home, but the officers wouldn't let her in. She kept saying, "I don't understand. I just need to get in there. Where's my daughter? What happened?" Eventually, they were able to calm her down, and they told her that they needed her to come down to the police station so they could gather some more information from her. And it didn't take long after that for the police to inform her, in no uncertain terms, that her daughter Denise had been shot and that she did not survive. Diane called it the worst day of her life, and I can't even imagine that pain. And then she had to do something that takes a lot of courage. Diane had to notify her husband that their beloved daughter had passed away. When Denise's dad, Doug, heard that his daughter had been killed, he couldn't contain his sadness. He was an absolute mess. His little girl, even though she was 39 at the time, his little girl was gone. It was unbelievable. And of course, the word traveled fast. It was shocking for everyone close to the family and the community. A murder on Valentine's Day, the day of love, and this happened to a loving person, someone that devoted their whole life to helping others, and no one could understand why this was happening. But if it was random, then of course the thief didn't care who they were when they crossed his path. But for this couple, they were so kind, and their Faith Baptist Church community was devastated. This was the family they helped raise funds for missionary work. In this post from back in 2012, just a year before the tragedy, the church said, "We received a call from Nathan Leuthold, our missionary to Lithuania. He's going to be passing through tomorrow night and will be in our Wednesday night service." It's obvious that the church held Nathan in high regard, and they looked forward to his presence. But now they had to deal with the reality of his wife's absence, and everyone wanted answers, and they might just get some. An officer located Denise's vehicle down the street at Robinson Park shortly after taking Nathan's description of her car. When I say down the street, it's a 1-minute drive from the home, about a 10-minute walk. In addition, it's a large natural area with forests for hiking and lots of land around there. It looked like this may have been the getaway car. Maybe the perpetrator used it to flee from the scene and they dumped it in this nearby park and then ran on foot. After Denise's body was found, Nathan was escorted by a detective to the police station for questioning. At the beginning of the interview, the detectives asked Nathan if he and Denise had any problems, and Nathan said no. Losing Denise was like losing his foundation. Nathan explained they had always been inseparable. Denise was his best friend since 3rd grade, the mother of his 3 children, the most important people in Nathan's life, and he had no idea how he was going to live without her. During the interview, the detectives asked Nathan to sign off on several search warrants, which he did. The warrants included the bedroom where Denise and Nathan slept, and Nathan and Denise's vehicles, their cell phones, their laptops, and hard drives. Denise's parents were also more than willing to give crime scene investigators access to their entire home. They wanted to find any evidence to who would have murdered their daughter, and they felt like this was quite the mystery. When Nathan was asked what Denise did that morning, he said she woke up around 6:45, which was usual, and while Denise woke up their children for school, Nathan got into the shower and was shaving and doing his everyday routine. Before Nathan drove his 2 older children to school, he explained that they exchanged their Valentine's gifts. And Nathan told the detective he had stopped at a spa and picked up a $75 gift card for Denise after dropping his children off at school. He also said that Denise stayed home with their daughter all morning until she drove her to daycare around noon. Detectives were very thankful for this information. It was very helpful. That timeline and a routine is significant. With this information, they thought that maybe they can pull up some surveillance footage and see if anyone had been following Denise or if there was anything out of the ordinary. They told Nathan that it was imperative to find out when the last time she had been seen was so they can narrow down the time frame of when Denise was murdered. She was supposed to go shopping after she dropped Janelle off to her pre-K session, and according to Nathan, Denise was supposed to pick up their older daughter Julia at middle school. However, that's when she never showed up. Nathan told the detectives he drove home to check on Denise, and that's when he saw the signs of a break-in at the house. Basically everything we already know. They asked Nathan if Denise had any problems with anyone, and he said no. They got along with everyone, their neighbors, they were well liked at the church, and they had actually just returned to Illinois from Lithuania a few years ago. He didn't even say they were back long enough to make any enemies. And of course, they had to ask him some uncomfortable questions. One's about marriage, specifically whether Denise had ever done anything behind his back, had any affairs or any boyfriends, anything like that. And he said no. And then they said, well, what about you? And again, he says no. He described Denise as the main one that holds their entire family together. She sounds like an amazing person. And as a matter of fact, anyone the detective spoke to about Denise only had good things to say about this woman. She was nearly perfect. A great mother, wife, friend. Anyone who knew her loved her. And whenever the detectives asked Nathan if anything valuable inside the home was missing, he said no. That the only thing he could think of was that there were two, maybe $200 watches, but nothing else high-end. Sometime at the end of the interview, Nathan was getting tired. It had been a long time, and he had been away from his children, and he really wanted to get back to them. And he said, quote, help me get back to my kids tonight, end quote. And one of the detectives said, we hope you will be. Nathan added, I can't leave them all night long. And they did finally let Nathan leave. They were very thankful for all of the information that he provided, and they wanted to get on the case ASAP. Detectives interviewed Nathan for over 6 hours. And after leaving the police station at 12:30 in the morning on February 15th, 2013, he headed to his sister's house to spend time with his children and grieve the loss of their mother and his wife. Residents in Peoria, Illinois, where Denise and Nathan lived, were terrified after hearing that even the police thought there could be a crazy killer on the loose. They were holding press conferences and telling people they need to be on high alert. The schools were on lockdown. Residents were scared for their lives because this happened in the middle of the day. It could have been anyone. Things like this just didn't happen there. This was a place where kids played in the streets and everyone trusted one another and knew one another, and now the streets were bare. Everyone was scared. Since Nathan and Denise did not live in a high crime area, residents began to be extra cautious. This was a big story, and although residents were like triple checking their doors and their windows, an eerie feeling came over the town. They were panicked and paranoid. An investigation into Denise's murder began immediately, and detectives did confirm a laptop, 2 guns, a digital camera, and several pieces of jewelry had been stolen from the home, and they were never recovered. Among the missing guns was a .40 caliber Glock. That was the same weapon that investigators believed Denise was shot with. Then they got a very important piece of evidence. When they were searching through reports at the police station, they come across a report from just 2 days before Denise's murder. It was made by Nathan. What they could gather from this report was that it was made on February 12, 2013, shortly after midnight. Nathan called to report a suspicious vehicle that was outside driving in the neighborhood. It even parked in their driveway and parked in the driveway directly across the street as well. And Officer Needham responded to the call, but by the time he arrived, the car was no longer there. The officer searched the area but didn't find anything suspicious. He said, should I go speak to your neighbors? And Nathan discussed it with him, and they said, you know what? I don't think it's necessary to wake people up and disturb them at this time of the night. At that point, it was just a suspicious car driving around in the neighborhood, parking in their driveway. But what was this all about? Was this car casing the neighborhood looking for homes to hit? That's what they thought. The detectives wanted to know more, so Nathan told them about the suspicious car that he saw. First, it was about a few weeks ago. So he saw it more than once. That's why it was really peculiar. He said that the first time it pulled into their driveway without any headlights on, which was odd because they had the lights on when they were on the road, but when they pulled into the driveway, they switched them off. So he goes to the front door, he turns on the outside light, and as soon as he does, the car backs up and leaves. And then it happened again for the second time, just 2 days before Denise's murder. And that's why he decided to call the police. This time they pulled into the neighbor's driveway, but he could tell it was the exact same car. So now they're gathering all of that information to go around and look to see if they can find it. After the media reported Denise's murder, Diane Parrish, a neighbor of Nathan and Denise's, contacted the detectives. She said sometime in the afternoon on February 14th, she saw a man walking in the direction of Denise's home wearing a black hooded sweatshirt with the hood up over his head and his hands in his pockets. Diane Parrish was concerned about this man because of the way his face looked. She said she could tell he was agitated and something was wrong, and that's pretty terrifying. Since Diane Parrish saw this man walking around Robinson Park, she had to notify detectives when she heard that Denise's car was found there. Then another neighbor reported hearing a gunshot between 12:30 and 12:45 p.m., which is around the same time detectives think that Denise was shot. If Denise stumbled across an intruder in her home, why would they kill her in cold blood? This was an issue that several detectives were having difficulty understanding. Maybe Denise's murder was not part of a robbery at all, but something else entirely. Something more sinister. At first glance, it appeared to be a robbery gone wrong, but investigators realized a robbery turned murder was not common. In the days following Denise's murder, Nathan stayed at his sister's house with his 3 children, and Nathan's mom and sister comforted him and helped him grieve the loss of his wife. They also helped him explain to Seth and Julia and Janelle that their mom had died. Nathan sat all of his children down and told them their mommy had been called home to be with God. He told his children that their mommy was loved and that she loved them very much. After that, Nathan said that they all hugged and they cried with one another, but they also prayed. And they thanked the Lord for giving them such a wonderful wife and mother. On February 19th, Faith Baptist Church posted this on Facebook, quote, "Nathan and Denise Leuthold are missionaries to Lithuania that our church has supported through the years, have been on furlough, and Denise was murdered in Peoria last week. Her funeral is today. We will be taking up a love offering Sunday to give towards the fund they've set up for their 3 young children. Please pray for them and leads in the investigation," end quote. Nathan then moved his family to the church mission home. His parents told his friends that Nathan left his sister's home out of fear for his family's safety. The person who killed Denise could return and take out the rest of their family, including their children. So Nathan was concerned that they were in danger, which was smart. It's better to be safe. And the church members were helping out. They were bringing home-cooked meals to them. But life just wasn't the same. Nathan and the kids were changed. Sometimes they would just stare into space, still in shock. When the crime scene had been cleared and cleaned, Denise's parents, Diane and Doug, asked Nathan to come by with the children so they could be with their family. But Nathan was too overcome with emotion. And he was really hesitant about bringing the children back to where their mother was killed. The children were too afraid, which is completely understandable. It would be very traumatic and hard. Of course, Diane and Doug Newton kept thinking about their daughter's murder. Diane worked at a store that sold high-definition TVs, and their home had a lot of electronic equipment in it, but it was all accounted for. And as a matter of fact, in the living room, the officers found all the electronic devices, including a TV and a Blu-ray player, in their proper places, and nothing of value seemed to be gone. Everything was still available for the taking. And back in 2013, Blu-ray players, I don't know if you remember this, they were the hottest item on the market. And the Newtons had several expensive DVD players in their home, but they weren't stolen by the person who killed Denise. However, the murderer did take 3 of Diane's rings. And she wondered how this person who killed her daughter would even know that those rings were worth anything. Detectives began asking the same questions as Denise's parents. Despite everything that they were observing, they didn't think the crime scene looked like a real robbery. One of the first strange things that detectives noticed was the neatly arranged junk drawers on the kitchen floor. Yes, the drawers were removed, but they were placed neatly on the floor like someone was concerned with making a mess. And the officers noted that nothing was scattered around. The drawers were there, but you would assume if someone broke in and was rummaging through, there would be a mess all around. And even more confusing was, why would a burglar go through a junk drawer? I'm talking a junk drawer full of pens and scissors. It was obvious when you opened it up, there was nothing significant in there whatsoever. So why waste your time? It didn't fit the normal MO. Another thing, one of the missing guns belonged to Nathan. It just happened to be the same caliber weapon responsible for shooting his wife in the head. Nathan owned a few guns, a 12-gauge shotgun, a .22 pistol, and a .40 caliber Glock. He said he kept the .40 caliber in a gun case. So detectives said, how hard is it to open this case? Do you have to use like a crowbar? And he goes, no, nothing like that. Okay, so the killer broke open a gun case. And he goes, yeah, I guess so. But there was no broken gun case on the scene. So they asked him, what do you think happened to the gun case? And Nathan said, well, Denise's murderer must have taken it with him when he fled. Really? You know what they're thinking, right? They're starting to look at the husband. They always do. No matter how good of a person you are, if you're close to the victim, you're going to be on their radar. And after shooting somebody in the head, detectives find it very difficult to believe a killer would have just stopped and then taken a broken gun case, because, he had to open it up somehow, right? With him. A gun case that Nathan owned. The murderer would have probably wanted to get out of that house immediately. He wouldn't have wasted time looking for the gun case that he broke so that he could take it with him. It would also be another thing for him to carry. The detectives asked Nathan when the last time he fired this weapon was, and he said, it was about 2 weeks ago. I was in Oklahoma, and I shot my .40 caliber Glock. But other things started to look suspicious as well. When the investigators initially came to the scene, Nathan didn't ask the police why they were entering the home with giant bulletproof shields. Wouldn't you be concerned if they were entering your house like that? Most people would, but Nathan did not seem concerned at all. And then later, as Nathan is starting to tell the officer what kind of car his wife drives, the officer thought it was odd he didn't even ask why. Wouldn't he want to know? Did you find anything inside? Nothing. Not one question. Not to mention the fact he already knew his wife was dead, which according to him was relayed to him via his father. Another thing detectives couldn't understand was how the killer drove Denise's car. Recall that they found a set of car keys matted in her blood-soaked hair. Did he hotwire the car, or did someone use a spare set? Detectives asked Nathan whether he knew if there was a spare set of keys to Denise's car, and he said, I don't know. Anytime I drove Denise's car, she just gave me her keys. They asked, when's the last time you drove it? And he said, I don't know, maybe like a year ago. But what didn't make sense was if the killer had to use a set of spare car keys, they had to be somewhere in the house that could be easily accessible, especially because there was no evidence that the ignition had been tampered with, so the car was not hotwired. He used the key. So where did he get this key? So detectives want to know. And they asked Nathan, was your car ever at Robinson Park that day? And he actually says yes, which is very odd. He said, yeah, it was sometime in the early morning, and then backtracks and says, well, it wasn't like early. It was just earlier before I came back to the house. And they want to know why. And Nathan explained, I just pulled over to take a phone call. Dude, you're 1 minute away from being home. That really did not make any sense. And still, the weirdest statement yet came from Nathan when he was driving with them to the police station. When they passed Robinson Park, one of the detectives heard Nathan whisper, the car's gone. If you didn't get that, he said, the car's gone under his breath, almost as though he didn't know he was saying it out loud. Like it was shocking to him. At that point, however, Nathan had not been told that anyone found Denise's car at the park. So why would he say that? It's looking like Nathan has some explaining to do, but first, investigators want to take a deeper dive to see what they can find out about him. I definitely was not ready for this at all. The detectives confront Nathan with everything. The fact that there's a missing .40 caliber just like the one he owned, plus the case, and Denise's car was moved seemingly by magic since supposedly there's no spare keys. And he fails to mention that his car was also at the park where they found her car that day. But he didn't have much to say. He kept saying, I don't have the answer. When they asked him, why didn't you mention that you were at that park? His excuse for not telling them he was at the park was because he just took a short phone call. But they didn't like what they were hearing and putting together. Let's go back to what they found inside the home. While searching in Diane and Doug Newton's home, the investigators uncovered $300 in a drawer, Denise's wallet, her purse, and then they find a day planner with a bunch of notes jotted down by Denise. It had quotes, scriptures, information about the kids' school, but one entry really stood out to detectives. Denise's entry written to Nathan, and it painted a very different picture of their relationship, different than the one Nathan claimed that he had with his wife. Additionally, this entry in the day planner might have hinted at Nathan's motive for murdering Denise if he was indeed her killer. The entry read, quote, "What on earth could you possibly be thinking? I can't imagine anything you could tell me that would hurt me worse than what you're doing to me right now. I don't think there's anything I've done or not done to deserve this. I have tried to please you for 17 years and never succeeded. Never been enough. Never done enough. I know you want me dead. I'm not stupid. I suppose I will confirm my worthlessness to you when I write that I am not brave enough to do that job for you. And now all of a sudden you're taking me with you to places? What is that all about? Maybe you think I don't feel bad enough. You act like you're somehow noble because you won't tell me why you're doing this. It makes me sick. I have been willing at any time to fall in love with you again, but you reject me every time. I wish I could hate you. I have tried to hate you because I thought it would make it easier. I thought it wouldn't hurt so bad. Of course I couldn't do so. I failed that too. I've been without pride, humiliated myself to try and win something that belongs to me. You don't seem to care. Well, I quit. I'm not going to try and please you anymore. I'll do what I have to do, but no more of that game. You want to humiliate me by running around with a 20-year-old? Fine. I won't grovel. If I have not pleased you in 17 years, nothing I do now will. And I refuse to leave my children just because you decided to do this to me. You're the only person who thinks that I'm a bad mother. Complete strangers compliment me on them, so I will not join you in obsession for perfection. I'm the same person I've always been. I am not weaker, and in many ways, I am stronger. I refuse to play to your perfectionism and that too. I have borne neglect and criticism and kept going. But now this. How long are you going to do this to me? Oh yeah, until I break. That's what you said, isn't it? Well, happy waiting. End quote. That was very emotional. That is a letter and words from a wife that is grieving. She's grieving the loss of the love of her life. Clearly, there were issues in their relationship. The detectives wanted to know who the 20-year-old girl that Denise was referring to in her note was. When the detectives received the records from Nathan's cell phone, they found out who Denise was alluding to. Because when they looked at who that phone call came in from, you know, the one that he said he had to pull over in the park to receive, the park that was only 1 minute away from the house, it all seemed to make sense. It was one of the foreign exchange students that they were sponsoring, but when I tell you her name, I hope it rings a bell. Ina Dobolate. You've heard this name before. Remember, she was the little 6-year-old girl I mentioned earlier in this story. During their time in Lithuania, the Leuthold's family became friends with the Dobolate family, which included their young daughter, Ina. The Leutholds and this family became acquainted in 1998. Denise and Nathan could see that little Ina was dedicated to God and her faith. She had given herself to the Lord, and Ina's mother was the one who truly helped Denise and Nathan get acquainted with everything in Lithuania, took them in, taught them the language, and helped them. Ina's mother was also always doing a lot for others and for the church. And Nathan was enamored with the way that little Ina followed her in her footsteps. Doesn't this sound familiar? Because it makes my stomach turn. She's 6. Ugh. Well, she was 16. Ina started babysitting for Denise and Nathan's children and participating in Denise's music lessons. And like Denise, Ina was a talented musician. She dreamed of studying music and the Bible in America. And then she wanted to return to Lithuania to use her skills as a musician to help connect people with God. And the Leutholds wanted to help, especially Nathan. I wonder why. It's like she's a younger version of Denise. In 2010, when Ina turned 18, Denise and Nathan agreed to sponsor her to come to the United States on a student visa. She enrolled in a Christian university in Pensacola, Florida, and Nathan decided to open up a joint bank account for himself and Ina so that he could easily help fund things. For about 2 years, Nathan was the one who took care of Ina's living expenses. And during any school breaks, she would actually fly to Illinois and stay with Denise and Nathan. But during Ina's time in Pensacola, Nathan was frequently traveling from Illinois to Florida to visit this teenager. This is too much. I swear, I don't trust anyone after reading these stories. That's my microphone. Anyone after reading these stories. And this was all under the guise of Nathan being this holier than thou Christian. And just wait. When Nathan visited Ina, they stayed in an off-campus apartment together. She stayed with her sponsor. No, that is just wrong. No. And the Christian university did not agree with this. They didn't take well to the fact that she was sleeping off campus with her older, married sponsor. So they put her on academic probation, as they should. I mean, I understand they're both technically adults, but this is just inappropriate. Before the Christian university suspended her, Ina decided to leave the school and move to Illinois, and she transferred to a non-religious school called Illinois Central College, which was a community college. She also decided to live in the basement of Denise's parents' home, the one that Denise and Nathan and their children are also living in. Wow. He moved her right in under his wife's nose. But of course, Denise is a wonderful woman. She loves helping people. So while Ina's living with her sponsors, Nathan would take her to a spa. A spa. Oh boy. It was called 5 Senses Spa in Peoria, and he paid for Ina's massages, waxing, and hair services. This was the same spa that Nathan told detectives he bought a gift card for Denise for. Remember that Valentine's Day gift card for like $74? Well, this information definitely interested detectives. They drove out to the 5 Senses Spa, and they wanted to question the employees about Nathan. The detectives asked the staff if they remembered Nathan and Ina, and they go, oh yeah, we assumed they were together, that they were a couple. However, the employees reported to detectives that Nathan shocked them on Valentine's Day when he asked for a gift certificate for his wife. This is pure disgust. They're sitting there writing like to Denise and thinking like, well, who's the other girl he's been bringing in here? As the detectives probed deeper into Nathan and Ina's relationship, they found out, in their opinion, it was much more than a sponsor-student type of relationship. In the summers of 2011 and 2012, the two of them frequently visited Cougarplex, which is a sports complex in Illinois, and they went there without Denise, watching the games, having fun. They also stayed in luxury hotels several times during the winter of 2012. And again, Denise did not go with her husband on these visits. No. While in Chicago, Nathan bought Ina an expensive coat and paid for dinners at high-end restaurants. The investigators also found evidence that Nathan and Ina traveled together on horseback without Denise at the Cook County Forest Preserve. Just these little outings with her sponsor. However, Ina was no longer living with the Leutholds at the time that Denise was killed. She had actually transferred to a Christian university back in Chicago called the Moody Bible Institute. It was 160 miles away from where they were and where Denise was murdered. But before Denise's murder, Diane, her mom, actually had this weird feeling about everything that was going on. Of course she did. She actually confronted her daughter and said, how do you feel about your husband having this relationship with Ina? Are you jealous that he's traveling with this teenager all alone? And according to Diane, Denise said no, that Ina was like family. Denise told her mom that she understood and she supported Ina's decision to get help from Nathan while she was living in the United States. Nathan was the only person who could speak fluent Lithuanian. And Denise said that she supported their friendship. She trusted him. And she probably shouldn't have. But they had sponsored a number of other students before. She didn't think she had anything to worry about. Detectives reviewed the text messages on Nathan and Denise's cell phone records, and Nathan's text to his wife were very different from the ones he sent to Ina. Most of the messages that Nathan exchanged with Denise were mundane. They lacked emotion. They were almost always about the children. Like, what were they doing? Confirming like pickup times, drop-off times, things like that. Not flirtatious, not passionate. But when it came to Nathan and Ina, these weren't just conversations about scripture between the two of them. They were actually able to recover some messages that Nathan thought he had deleted. In one exchange between the two of them, it was the afternoon before Denise's murder. And Ina says, "I'm going to the gym." And Nathan said, "Without me?" And when she was done, she said, "Done with the gym." And this man responds with, "Wet?" ? This man is asking her if she is wet, and I know he does not mean from the shower or her sweaty workout. And she responds with, "A little bit." And Nathan says, "But you smell good. You are also beautiful." He doesn't have game. He doesn't. Those are like, what? But really? Come on. You're asking this young girl if she is wet? No. Having gathered sufficient background information on Ina, the detectives drove to Chicago to question her regarding her relationship with Nathan. But what they wanted to do was start out very simple. They didn't want to tip her off about the fact that they knew there might be more going on with her and Nathan. They asked the basics, how do you know the Leutholds? How long have you known them? Can you tell me a little bit about the family? But as they got into the questions that were more probing, guess what happened? Ina, who was speaking complete fluent English, all of a sudden started to say, "I don't understand the question. I don't understand." Really? She just stared at them, stone cold, and refused to answer any of their questions about Denise. The detectives tried to shock her. They put crime scene photos in front of her, bloody crime scene photos, and Denise's autopsy photos, and she never responded. And they were frustrated by the lack of emotion that was coming from this girl. So they called her out. And one of these detectives, he was a badass. I love the way he went about this because I watched some of these interviews. And he was just going hard. He's like, these people brought you to America from Lithuania. They treated you like family. And now this woman is dead and it doesn't bother you? And she just looked at him and she's like, "I cried enough over the weekend." But he couldn't understand why it didn't seem like she cared. And it didn't end there. During the interview, the detective questioned her about the trips to the spa. And this detective was like, "Listen, if my wife ever found out that I was taking a 20-year-old for waxes and massage appointments, I would be kicked out of the house. My stuff would be on the front yard." This made no sense to him. So he was like, "What is all of this about?" And the detective was relentless. He even went so far as to literally confront her and say, "What did you need waxing with Nathan there?" And she just did not respond. I mean, this detective was ballsy. He was literally like, "What exactly was he getting waxed up for you, huh?" When the detectives asked Ina if she and Nathan had a sexual relationship, she denied it. And they said, "Okay, well, why did you switch schools?" Now, see, they already knew why, but they wanted to hear it from her. She said she injured her hands while she was studying piano, and she had to leave. She didn't say she was kicked out, but the investigators were aware of the scandal, that she was involved in sleeping with her sponsor off campus. So now they've caught her in a lie. The official records they subpoenaed from the school stated she was dismissed for having an inappropriate relationship with her sponsor, Nathan Leuthold. The amount of text messages was also suspicious. If he was just checking in as a sponsor, there would maybe be one or two, but they carried on conversations on a regular basis. But no one in Nathan's immediate circle thought he had anything to do with what happened to Denise. He was a missionary after all, a Christian, a good-hearted person. It had to be someone else, someone pure evil. However, one day, the minister from their own church came to talk to Denise's parents. The first question out of his mouth to Denise's mother was, do you think Nathan had anything to do with this? And that was shocking. But there was a reason why he wanted to know. It was to confirm his own suspicions about something that he had seen that didn't sit right with him. He had seen Nathan and Ina driving around together alone several months before Denise's death. To him, the fact that Denise wasn't with them made it look like there was something more going on with this couple. And later he said that he called Denise and Nathan into his office for a meeting. And he cautioned Nathan about his behavior. The minister told him in front of Denise that it wasn't a good look and that this behavior could potentially be detrimental to the ministry. He warned Nathan that the church could withhold his funds. They had been providing him financial support to fund his missionary work. But get this, 2 times a week, he was receiving $2,500. And this was financial aid from various churches around the country. Wow. Well, that explains why he told Little Miss to move 160 miles away after this happened. The detectives decided to take a deeper look into Nathan's whereabouts on Valentine's Day 2013. They examined CCTV footage taken from Starbucks, Chase Bank, and all around town, where Nathan claimed to have stopped. The detectives also asked the Five Senses Spa for their footage from that day. And when they reviewed this footage, they found Nathan was indeed at these locations on February 14th. However, his whereabouts could only be accounted for until 11:30 a.m. There was a gap between the time he exited Starbucks, 11:30 a.m., and returned to that same Starbucks at 12:45 p.m. Detectives thought Denise was actually murdered during that exact time frame. They even found a route that Nathan could have taken from Starbucks to Robinson Park, where he could have walked to the house, then driven Denise's car back to the park, grabbed his car, and went back to Starbucks. And according to the investigators, they traveled this route and it only took them 6 minutes and 55 seconds. And of course, you have to account for the time it would have taken to commit the crime and walking to and from the park and the house, 10-minute walk. So let's say 25 to 30 minutes. The detective said this was not only possible, but it's probably what happened. It was easier to think that Nathan did this than some random person who just happened to be in the area, break in, steal things, rummaged around, found a gun and a spare set of keys, heard a woman coming, broke into the gun case, got the gun, killed this person, and then either searched around for the spare keys and or broken gun case before fleeing the scene. It didn't make sense. And guess what? After scouring the park, an officer discovered fleece gloves about 50 feet away from the car and a set of spare car keys in a trash can. So there were spare keys after all. On top of that, they found a black hoodie crumbled up on the floor of Denise and Nathan's room. And it looked like it had been taken off in a hurry and just thrown there. And it matched the one the neighbor said that she saw a man wearing on his way from where? Robinson Park to the Newtons' home on the day of the murder. A couple weeks later, law enforcement was analyzing reports that they had requested. They'd finally come back, and they were from Nathan's laptop. Nathan, cleverly, had set the browser to not save his history. So anytime he would search something, it would just disappear. However, forensic programs make it easy to uncover these deleted searches. When are we going to learn that you can't outsmart smart devices? They found disturbing internet searches that had been conducted using Nathan's personal laptop, including phrases like blow to the head, hitting someone over the head to knock them out, how to cause sleep paralysis, sleep-inducing drugs, methods to take your own life, but they were in other words, of course, same method but taking life from insulin, lethal injection, dying by injecting air, murder insulin, drowning in a bathtub, electrocution in tub, or how to kill yourself with insulin, where to buy potassium chloride, how to hide the sound of a gunshot, how to silence a Glock 40, which is the exact gun he owned, and the type used to kill Denise. Finally, he searched how to erase everything from an iPad. These searches span the last few months. So he is sitting there thinking about and searching different ways to murder his wife. Oh no, That's not what he said happened. Wait, because he has an explanation for these searches. I couldn't believe it. First, he denies ever killing Denise, of course. And for the searches, are you ready for this? He says, "We started a foundation overseas called Hope for Tomorrow, and it was to combat people taking their own lives." He literally said that he was doing research, looking at websites that desperate people used to get information about what they were going to do in their last moments. Cool story, bro. On March 6, 2013, only 3 weeks after Denise was murdered, Nathan Leuthold was arrested for first-degree murder, and they pulled him over right after he dropped his kids off at school. They put handcuffs on him. They put him in the back of a cop car, and he sat there, and he was like, "What's going on?" You're going to jail." He's like, "What for?" He's acting shocked. They're like, "Your wife's murder?" It was definitely shocking. It was shocking for the community, that's for sure. Everyone who knew this family did not expect this to happen. Some didn't and wouldn't believe it. Many people who had known Nathan for years said that the only reason they were putting him behind bars was because the police couldn't solve the case, so they needed to place blame on someone. But men do this all the time. I mean, women do too, but men do it more. Look at Chris Watts. All for the mistress and losing that love and feeling. But even Denise's mom would not believe it. This was someone that she knew since he was a child. She had to wait for it to all play out in court. And Nathan maintained his innocence. He said something I heard in a previous case that I did. It was the one about Tara Grant, and I don't want to ruin it for anyone, so if you didn't see it, please fast forward to the timestamp on the screen right now. But in that case, Tara Grant's husband, Stephen, said that he missed Tara. She was the one he went to when anything went wrong. The one he went to when he needed advice and answers. Well, Nathan said the same thing. He said that Denise was the one I would go to in any difficult time to ask what to do. And that he found himself doing that in the days after her death. Like, what do we do with the kids? And he just wanted to be able to call her and talk to her. Well, like I said, I've heard and seen this before. It's the same song and dance from Stephen Grant, who dismembered his wife and stuffed her in a Rubbermaid container. So it means nothing to me. It's alligator tears. After his arrest, Nathan filed several pretrial motions. His first motion was to suppress all the statements that he made the day of Denise's murder on February 14, 2013. He claimed he'd never been informed of his Miranda rights before his 6-hour interview. Nathan's sister, father, and several detectives appeared before the court during this 2-day hearing in March of 2014. The court reviewed Nathan's interview in its entirety, and after hearing the detective's testimony and reviewing the footage, the court determined that the language used by the police was never confusing, and additionally, the court noted that Nathan spoke coherently and he appeared to be confident. During his interview, he also received several phone calls. Some of those were from Ina. And while Nathan was alone in the room, about 2 hours and 53 minutes into the interview, he called his dad. And according to the court's interpretation of these recordings, Nathan never mentioned anything about wanting to leave. He didn't tell his father he wanted to speak to a lawyer. No, nothing like that. According to the court, however, Nathan seemed pretty concerned when his father told him that Denise's murder was broadcasted on the news and that it was on Facebook. He was even more concerned when he found out that the pastor of their church found out about her murder. Did he not think anyone would care that his wife was gone? That his church wouldn't be talking about it? That this wouldn't be big news in their community? Wouldn't you want people to know so they could find the killer? But no, he was just going on about his day, telling his dad where to get clothes for the kids. It was like nothing happened. During the trial, the court heard the detective say, "No, you're not in custody. You could walk right out the door right now." There were times during the interview when Nathan opened the door himself and walked in and out of the room. There were numerous breaks taken, and approximately 3 hours and 21 minutes into the interview, he told detectives he had just spoken to his in-laws, Doug and Diane. And right afterward, he said to them, "I'm not in custody, but can I talk to you?" He said that to the investigator, so he wanted to talk. And clearly, if he says, "I'm not in custody," he knows that he's what? Not in custody. So the court held that the detectives did not violate his constitutional rights when taking this statement, and they dismissed his motion. He was read his Miranda rights 4 hours in because That's when they went into the home. And that's when they were digging deeper and they were asking more pressing questions. So the Miranda rights were read word for word on video. And the detective said, knowing these or having these rights read to you, do you wish to waive them and speak to us? And he said he did want to continue speaking to them. Finally, at 5 hours and 31 minutes, that's when Nathan finally says, I'm so physically tired. If you guys want to keep talking, I don't want to do this. The court said that at this time, they had already finished the interview. It was only at the end of the video that Nathan said, if the only way for me to stop this dead-end conversation is for me to exercise a right, then I need to know how to do that. And based on its review, the court found that the length of the interview, 6 hours, was not excessive since Nathan was the person who called the police to report the crime, and they found he wasn't in custody before the Miranda warnings were given. And so for all those reasons, they denied his motion to suppress. On April 23rd, 2014, Nathan had a court hearing for the motion he filed to suppress all the electronic information that investigators discovered. But Nathan had knowingly and voluntarily signed all the consent forms to allow the authorities to search his devices without any limits. And the court found that law enforcement properly gathered all the evidence. Nathan even attempted to bar the prosecution from presenting that letter that they found in Denise's day planner. The state filed a motion on June 4, 2014, seeking a ruling that the note would be admissible. But according to Nathan, that letter violated his right to marital privilege. What? That's ridiculous. If you indeed killed her, you lost your rights. And after all, those were her private writings. But in the end, the court concluded that Denise's letter was spontaneous. It wasn't the result of questioning, and the letter was not written with any government involvement. So there was no evidence that Denise intended the letter to be used against Nathan. These were just her words, her thoughts. It was like her diary. So the letter was admitted. It did not violate Nathan's constitutional rights. Jury selection for Nathan Leuthold's trial began July 2014. And at the same time, a judge ordered that cameras were allowed in the courtroom and to film this court case. And this was the first of its kind for this particular county. This was a big case. This was an overtly religious man, a missionary at that. It happened in an upscale neighborhood. It was of high public interest. The murder trial against Nathan began Monday, July 14, 2014. Jody Hughes was prosecuting the case alongside Jerry Brady from the state's attorney's office. And during her opening statement, she said that she didn't need a confession from Nathan to find him guilty. She stated that she would present eyewitness testimony, DNA, gunshot residue, forensic cell phone analysis, and computer analysis, plus a motive in the victim's own words to prove that Nathan killed his wife. The prosecutor even pointed to Nathan and said he did it. However, of course, according to Nathan's attorney, Hugh Toner, the state isn't telling the whole story. He said, sure, investigators found gunshot residue on the sweatshirt Nathan wore, but he wore it when he was hunting. Of course, there was going to be gunshot residue on that. As far as the defense attorney was concerned, the state's evidence did not prove that his client murdered anyone. Diane Parrish was the first witness to take the stand. She was a neighbor, and she testified that she saw a man with a black hooded sweatshirt walking against traffic on the side of the road at 12:20 p.m. on February 14th in the direction of Denise's home, and that it was suspicious to her because people often use that road early in the morning or in the evening after work, but never during the day. Another witness testified that she drove to her sister's house, which was near Denise's, and it was around 12:30 on February 3rd and again on February 14th. She said that she heard a gunshot on one of those dates, and according to the woman, she was more than sure it was on February 14th, but she couldn't be certain. However, that goes to the time frame. Even little Miss Ina testified at Nathan's trial with the assistance of an interpreter. But before Nathan's murder trial, she invoked her Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. However, the state offered her immunity, so she changed her mind and decided to testify. While on the witness stand, Ina stated that she attended college in Pensacola, Florida between 2010 and 2011. She talked about Nathan visiting her and the apartment that they shared off campus. She also told them that she did travel with Nathan to Europe during the summers of 2011 and 2012 without Denise. Wow. They went across the country on these trips. The prosecutor presented photos of their horseback riding passes from the Cook County Forest Preserve. But Ina denied ever telling Nathan that she loved him. She said they were never lovers. But according to her, Nathan emailed her on January 18, 2013, about a month before the murders. And this is what the email said, quote, "I let you down and I'm sorry. I'm not going to make excuses. That would not be fair to you. You deserve someone who respects you and puts their relationship first. And from now on, I want to do all that I can do to be that person. There's nothing more important to me than you in this relationship. I'm so blessed to have you in my life, and I know it." End quote. What does that sound like to you? It's kind of ambiguous. I don't know, but I can't get the gym text out of my head asking if she's wet. Yuck. According to Ina, she spoke with Nathan 3 times on February 14th. At 3 p.m., Nathan sent a text to her saying that he believed there had been a robbery at the house. And you know how she responded? She just said, "Interesting." And she put an emoji of a smiley face. If that's not weird, I don't know what is. Why a smiley face? And of course, she acknowledged that that reaction was inappropriate. And I'd say so. It's kind of as though it was planned. That he said something like, "You know what? I'm going to text you. I'm going to tell you about the burglary." But since she was young and maybe there was some kind of barrier in the communication, she didn't realize that she needed to be more careful by how she responded. But Ina testified that Nathan's family was paying for her attorney fees. That's right. And that she and his parents were in contact every single day since Nathan's arrest. Interesting, to use her words. After Denise's murder, Nathan's parents advised Ina not to talk to the police. The prosecutor also presented some jailhouse conversations between Nathan and Ina between May 16th and 18th, 2013. And guess what? They spoke in Lithuanian. Even though they both spoke English fluently, and Ina attended several English-speaking colleges in the United States and received very good grades, she asked for a translator in court, even though she was proficient in speaking and written English. Convenient. Sounds like a strategy to me. That was also an excuse that she brought up. She said she was closer to Nathan because he spoke Lithuanian proficiently, unlike Denise, who she said never had an interest in perfecting her language skills. One of their phone conversations, which the prosecution translated, sounded as though Nathan was coaching Ina on what to say when she was questioned. He said to explain to the detectives that she had known his family for over a decade. And then he instructed her to inform them that he was just her spiritual advisor, a clergy member, and that Denise was okay with their friendship. The detectives should know that Denise liked and prayed for Ina, so Nathan reminded her to say that. And he also said, don't forget, clergy and their congregation talk privately, just like attorneys and clients do. Ina also testified that she did not attend Denise's funeral. And she emailed her mom, Inga, in Lithuania just before the funeral. And in that email, this is what she said, quote, "Everything is under God's control. He has a plan, and this is part of his plan. Everything is not as awful as it sounds. Children and Nathan are really doing well. It might be quite difficult on Monday and Tuesday, but after that, it should be better. Many people are praying. It could be felt. Children cried only once when they first learned about it. Nathan and Denise's daughter did not say once that she wanted her mother. But if she needs anything, she asks for Ina." Yikes. It's like she just easily took over Denise's place. I would be rolling over in my grave if this was happening to me. The pastor of Lamarche Baptist Church testified at Nathan's trial. He said he had spoken to Nathan and Denise and members of the church about Nathan and Ina being alone. The owner of the spa testified, talking about how him and Ina visited for 2 years, and that Denise also visited the spa, but they were never aware that Denise was Nathan's wife until he came in to buy that gift card. But it was the testimony of one witness in particular that was very damning to Nathan's defense. His name was David Smith. He met Nathan about March or April of 2013 while he was serving a 14-year sentence in the county jail. The two men were housed in the same unit and would talk daily for hours. Nathan had asked David for guidance on his hypothetical legal questions, and David promised to never reveal what Nathan said. But according to David Smith, Nathan confided in him. He said that Denise was overbearing. He even said that he met another woman and he was ready to move on. The prosecutor asked David if Nathan told him what the name of this woman was that he was dating, and David responded, I think it was Lana, something like that. It's close to Ina, I guess. David Smith testified that Nathan told him that on the day of the murders, he did certain things to account for his whereabouts at certain times. He even said he purchased a Valentine's Day gift for Denise so that everything seemed normal, and that he parked his car in Robinson Park, passed through the woods, and went to the house, then hid in the closet and waited for Denise to come home. David also said that Nathan was wearing something black, including a hoodie. However, he changed his clothes because he thought that someone had seen him walking to the house. And as Denise returned home from her errands, Nathan actually spoke to her before he killed her. According to him, he shot his wife on the left side of her head. He told David Smith that he chose Valentine's Day for the murder as a present for the other woman. That is evil. According to Nathan, he initially considered poisoning his wife with insulin or potassium, but then he just decided to use a gun because it was easier, but he wanted to find a silencer. And he deliberately went to places like Starbucks, the bank, and just hung out so that he could be places at certain times and that he could be placed there. And I realized that these jailhouse snitches, they aren't always, great at telling the truth. They do have access to the news, so it's not always that persuasive, but he knew very crucial information. A forensic scientist, though, found Nathan's DNA on Denise's gear shift, which was interesting, since Nathan had said during his initial interview that he had not driven her car in over a year. Another forensic scientist testified that gunshot residue was found on the right cuff of that black hooded sweatshirt in Denise and Nathan's room. And based on these findings, the black sweatshirt was either near a firearm when it was fired, or it had made contact with an item with gunshot residue. After the state rested, it was time for Nathan's attorney to present their case. The first witness that they called was a neighbor of Denise and Nathan's. He said that he saw that suspicious vehicle at least twice on the street that he shared with Denise and Nathan. The defense said somebody else committed this murder, and they presented evidence regarding other home invasions and burglaries in the area. A detective testified that a series of home invasions followed Denise's murder, and each of these crimes happened within a year. They would come in, they would enter the home, they would remove electronics and jewelry, and the offenders even made off with the victim's car, just like they did in Denise's case. But my question was, did they kill someone in those cases? But after hearing both the state's and the defense's arguments, the trial court ruled that none of these other crimes committed in the area were relevant to Denise's murder. The judge noted that those robberies occurred months after Denise's death, and all of those crimes were on the opposite side of town in more densely populated areas. And furthermore, the offenders in the other burglaries tied up the victims and taunted them, then looted their homes and stole their vehicles. But Denise's car was left not far from their home. In the other cases, the cars were left in other counties, far from where the crime was committed. And the additional cases did not involve injuries or death. The prosecution and the defense gave their closing arguments. The state's attorney focused on evidence related to motive, the extramarital affair with Ina. Aside from that, they argued that Nathan didn't show any emotion during that video recorded interview. He didn't even ask what happened to his wife. It only took the jury 2 hours to come back with a guilty verdict on first-degree murder. Nathan appealed his conviction immediately after hearing the verdict. There was a hearing on September 14, 2014 for Nathan's sentence and post-trial motion. The judge denied Nathan's motion for a new trial and sentenced him to 80 years in prison. If he were ever to get out, the judge remanded him to 3 years of mandatory supervised release. After the trial, Nathan told Dateline that he was planning on testifying but changed his mind. He said that the state moved beyond the facts of the case and he refused to give them any more fuel. According to Nathan, the cops never looked past him to find the real robber. Nathan also told Dateline that there were insurance claims that showed that items had been stolen during Denise's murder. And I watched this interview, and man, all I can say is that this guy can lie with a straight face. I believe he's as guilty as charged. But Nathan just kept on saying it may not look like a normal burglary, but it was. And he was furious that the state had portrayed his relationship with poor Ina as inappropriate. She was just a child. That's right, she was just a child when y'all met. She was 6. But Nathan said he was just her mentor. And he added that when the state accused him of murdering his wife on Valentine's Day as a gift to Ina, that was the harshest statement in the whole trial. He said that it was difficult for him to decide what's more sickening, the person who would do it or the person who would suggest it. Regarding that damning note that was found in Denise's day planner, Nathan said his wife never expressed those feelings to her friends, her parents, or her sister. She never called the cops or sought counseling. Well, maybe she was embarrassed. Not everyone wants to air their dirty laundry. Nathan explained that if Denise had felt threatened, why didn't she just get a restraining order against him? Denise didn't pursue a restraining order because there was nothing seriously wrong. He didn't want her dead, according to him. And Nathan talked about how he felt when he heard the guilty verdict. He said he had the same feeling in the pit of his stomach as he did on Valentine's Day when he learned that Denise had been killed. Yeah, probably because now it's his life that's being taken away. At Nathan's sentencing hearing, the judge criticized him for 30 minutes for his actions. The way that he murdered Denise inside her family home was shameful. While giving her victim impact statement, Diane expressed the disgust she felt at Nathan's actions. She described her son-in-law as repulsive and evil and said that he's stolen their daughter from them. He actually filed a motion to retain custodial rights over his 3 children, Seth, Julia, and Janelle. Well, Diane and Doug, Denise's mother and father, were given custody, and Nathan's motion was denied. Poor Diane and Doug had to explain to their grandchildren what happened, why Nathan was going to jail, that he was convicted of murdering their mother. And you know Seth, their oldest child, well, he said to his grandparents, everyone makes mistakes. Well, Doug explained that his father had made a very bad decision and how everyone is given choices in life, and Nathan made some extremely poor ones. And that's to say the least. How sad is it for these poor children? And I saw that just 8 weeks ago, someone commented on that Faith Baptist Church post from back February 19, 2013 in regard to what happened to Denise. Remember that one? I showed it to you. The one that said that they were taking up an offering for a fund that was set up for the children. Well, someone named Jeff Millot, he commented. He said Nathan stole the fund money for the kids and gave it to his mistress after he murdered Denise. Wow. Who knows? I mean, it's probably true, considering that he was also collecting funds from the church and he was spending it on trips and dinners and hotels, so I would not be surprised. Diane Newton's heart is still breaking. It breaks for her husband, who's still coping with their daughter's murder, and it breaks for the children who have to live without their mother and even their father since he's in jail. Diane said that Doug used to always brag to everyone about how perfect his life was and how happy he was with his children and the families they'd built. The Newton family never anticipated anything like this would happen to them. But now Diane knows bad things can always happen, even to good people. And it's true. I'm so sorry for what happened to Denise. I'm so sorry to her family. I'm hoping somehow her children have been able to find peace through all of this. And I want to thank all of you for watching this video and giving Denise your time to hear her story. I will see you in my next one. Bye.